Hello and welcome to the Miles Irvin Show. I'm your host, Miles, and this is episode 6 of the Over Under series, the final edition of this series. This is a series where I take a look at every team's projected win totals for the upcoming NBA season, and I determine if I think they're going to win more games or less games. In this episode, we are going to take a look at the Northwest Division. Before we get started, like I've said at the beginning of all these videos, feel free to leave a comment with your opinions and predictions for all of these teams, as I love hearing opinions besides myself about all these teams. With all that said, let's get into it. So our final division, the Northwest Division, here are all the teams. We've got the NBA champion Denver Nuggets, along with the Timberwolves, Thunder, Trailblazers, and Jazz. And as you can see by these win totals, these are teams that, besides the Nuggets, of course, winning the title last season, teams that are kind of in the middle of things a little bit, trying to figure out, their way and their direction for some of these teams. And a lot of it will come down to progression from some of their young players. So let's get into this. Let's start off, the Damian Lillard trade just happened. So let's get into the Trailblazers first, since they're fresh on my mind. The Blazers are at 29.5 wins projected for this season after the trade. And, this is a fresh number that they just made a couple days ago. This whole offseason, their number has been blank since we all knew that Damian Lillard was going to get traded. And with the trade netting them DeAndre Ayton and Drew Holiday, 29.5 wins are where the Blazers are out. Now, the Blazers, when you look at this team, post-trade, they've got a pretty decent, starting five and core. If they wanted to keep Drew Holiday, which I don't think is going to happen. I mean, if they do, I could see this being a half of season thing with Drew Holiday, where he's there to mentor Scoot Henderson to begin his young career. But even if you don't have Drew Holiday, you have Scoot Henderson, Anthony Simons, Shaedon Sharpe, Jeremy Grant, DeAndre Ayton. At the very least, that is a fun starting five. Now, will they win a lot of games? Probably not. They probably should look to lose some games. Now, I'm very interested to see who the Blazers will get back for Drew Holiday. I'm sure that they'll be able to get some draft picks for him, because Drew Holiday is definitely a very valuable name that's being thrown out, across the league, across probably every single championship contender that could use a sort of guard like that. Drew Holiday is definitely a valuable piece around the league. But besides those players I named for the Blazers in that starting five, I mean, you've got Matisse Thybulle. I mean, this is a very shallow roster. I mean, you gave up a lot of pieces along with Lillard in that trade. You traded Nurkic, you traded Nasir Little, you traded Keon Johnson. You do have Tamani Carrara, the rookie that was acquired from Phoenix. And, of course, DeAndre Ayton. Now, we are all very curious to see how DeAndre Ayton will play with a lot less of the spotlight on him. How will he play, as that number one option you would expect? Of course, we don't know how Scoot Henderson's going to play. He definitely projects to be a terrific player in this league, but this year, we don't know how that's really going to turn out. And then Anthony Simons has been, great the last few years too, but we don't really know, his sort of role with this team. I mean, two scorers with Henderson and Simons. I mean, it's very, it's very Portland Trailblazers-esque to have these two score-first guards, as their backcourt. So another interesting piece here, of course, is Jeremy Grant, who signed the large extension in the offseason, but now with this trade, he doesn't really fit. So, will teams want to pick up that large contract midway through the season? We will soon find out. But as far as 29.5 wins, I could see a world, honestly, where they go over. But I'm going to go under just because I hope that the Blazers, get more pieces, maybe at that power forward spot if they feel like trading Jeremy Grant, that small forward spot as well. because, Shaden Sharp isn't really a three. I mean, it's a bunch of small guards really that makes up their young core. And then of course Aiton, but like Scoot Henderson, Anthony Simons, Shaden Sharp, they're all guards, So the Blazers, I think, will go under just because I think they should, because this is kickstarted, their full-on rebuild with Scoot Henderson, and they should look to try to get another good piece in the draft this year. Now, next up, let's do these two teams right back to back and kind of together, because these are two teams, as I've mentioned before in a previous video, that I think are so close together, and that's why they have the same projected wins. And that is the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Oklahoma City Thunder, each at 44.5 wins. In the previous video where I talked about these teams all being in the same tier to me, that was the Pelicans. The Timberwolves, Thunder, and Pelicans are all really similar to me. I guess also that's also kind of because of where they finished last season. They were all right next to each other, and they all kind of played each other really in the play-in tournament. At least OKC played both Minnesota and New Orleans. The question is, of these three teams to me, which one is going to exceed expectations and take the next step? Which team is kind of just going to have stagnant growth and not really improve? And which team is going to disappoint? Now, in the Pelicans video, I said because of the Pelicans' injury history and the uncertainty of their guys playing, that I had them on the under and them being the worst team out of these three, because you just don't know. You can't trust their health. And of course, with Trey Murphy already being out to start the year, that doesn't help it with any of that either. So it really comes down to the Timberwolves or Thunder, who is going to have the better season. And to me personally, I have more faith in Minnesota than OKC just because of Anthony Edwards, man. I think he is ready to take a huge major step in the league this year after, the Team USA breakout. I mean, even though they lost in the FIBA World Cup, he was definitely their best player. A lot of people heading into that were expecting Brandon Ingram to be their best player because he was the most seasoned guy there, which is crazy to even think about because it still feels like Ingram is a pretty young player. But Anthony Edwards was definitely the best player and the most impressive player there. So I think that he's going to go right into this season and, become a super special player in this league even more than he already has, because he's just such a good player. When you look at on the court, off the court, he's a great character off the court. He's a super funny guy. And on the court, he's very solid on both ends of the floor. So he is going to have a terrific season. And I think in year 2 of having Rudy Gobert on this roster and being able to have hopefully a full season of the Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert front court, for a whole season, I think that that's going to help them win some more games, especially against Oklahoma City, who does not have the bigs. They do not have, real center depth. And we'll get to them later, but the Timberwolves, I have them going on the over for this season for 44.5 wins, mainly due to Anthony Edwards. I just think he's going to take another terrific step, and the Timberwolves are ready for it. I mean, last year was a disappointment. 2 years ago, when they took the Grizzlies to 6 games, a lot of people expected them to do great things the next year. I was one of them, especially considering their schedule started off so easy last year and they fumbled it. That's a part of a reason why they were the 8th seed in the playoffs last year. But this year, I think will be different, and I think the Timberwolves will have a solid season and will go over. Now, for the Thunder, this is a team that everyone is talking about making the next jump because of how good their young core is. And I can't blame them because their young players, well, their whole roster is basically just young players. But, man, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was a superstar last year. Josh Giddey was very solid. You got Jalen Williams going into year 2. He looks super jacked now with the photos that you see of him from the offseason. The Thunder, man, they definitely have the potential to win win some games, but with a lack of veterans on this team, I guess a lack of playable veterans on this team, I don't really see it happening. Like, the only vets that are on this roster are Victor Oladipo, who I don't think is going to report to training camp. I'd be surprised if he ended up really playing for that team again. And Davis Bertans, who's cool and all, but he's like, if that's your only veteran, I don't know how it's going to be as far as leadership goes, players wise, because Mark Daigneault is a very good young coach. Um, but another question: how will Chet Holmgren fare in his rookie season? This is of course his rookie season after missing all of last year. How will he play against the other superior bigs in the league as far as physicality wise? Because he's another young big man that's like, he's got a bunch of guard-like skills, can shoot the ball from range, and he has the ball handling skills, but he doesn't have that, super like physical size really that I think you need against teams like Minnesota. Minnesota blew out OKC in the play-in game. Big reason of that was due to the big play of Towns and Gobert. So I think as far as those two teams head to head, I think they're so similar, but I think the Timberwolves will be just a little bit better. It may even be just one game better, but I think the Timberwolves are going to be better than the Thunder. So I'm putting the Thunder on the under. Thunder on the under. But, that's not to say that they're going to have an awful year. Like, if they won 44 games, that's a 4-win improvement, and Shea, was incredible last year. If they got, jumps from, even bigger jumps from like Josh Giddey, Jalen Williams, Lou Dort is still there, guys like that, then, that's a very good season for the Thunder. And then I think that we may be a year too early on this team, and we can start having these types of conversations about them really making noise in a loaded Western Conference. I think we can start having that conversation next year. I just think this year it's a little too early for the Thunder. Utah Jazz are at 35.5 wins. So Utah going into last season after, blowing up their roster, trading Mitchell, trading Gobert, trading Bogdanovich, they were expected to be, an absolutely horrific team, the worst in the league. And they were not. They had a great start to the year. And, all around, they had a very solid season. Of course, that's huge thanks to Lauri Markkanen just blossoming into an all-star starter and one of the best versatile players in the league. So now they are at 35.5 wins. And, this is a team that I think should be in the rebuild and look to lose games like they should have last year. Because, when you look at their team, it's a bunch of super solid players, but I feel like this could be another team that could just, like, be mid. Like, when you look at the starting lineup of, like, Sexton, Jordan Clarkson, Markkanen, they got John Collins from Atlanta, and Walker Kessler, at their best, they're a playing team, and I just think that with how good the West is, this is a team that should be near the bottom and looking to get younger assets. Because, Sexton really isn't he used to be like a pretty young prospect player, but like we now know who Sexton is. He is a very good isolation scorer. Jordan Clarkson is a good scorer. Last year, he had the best year of his career statistically. He was playmaking a lot more as well. Markkanen, of course, all-star player. He's fantastic. Walker Kessler, a terrific shot blocker. I think that he's a guy that he should be their only untouchable player, in my opinion, because all these guys, I think, could give you better assets. And these guys, that I just named, the Sexton, Clarkson, Markkanen, John Collins, none of them are going to get any better. I wouldn't think, at their age. I feel like what we've seen is what we're going to get from these guys, and you're not going to you're not going to be able to get back to where you were even with like Mitchell and Gobert when they were the best team in the league. Like they need to go into the full rebuild mode to tank and get younger assets. So I think that that's what the Jazz should do. I definitely see a world where they trade some of those guys that I'm talking about to allow for more opportunities for an Ochai Agbaji, rookie Taylor Hendricks coming into this year, Taylor Horton Tucker. For that, I've got the Jazz on the under for 35.5 wins. And this is a team that I just hope they go ahead and just try to tank this season away to get younger because, it's fun. These guys are all fun players, Sexton, Clarkson, Markkanen, of course. But they each would thrive on a very solid, good team if they were put in certain roles. And they haven't, besides Clarkson, of course, because he's the oldest of those three guys, he's the only one that's really had experience on playing on super good teams. Sexton has not. Markkanen really has not either. So I think both of those guys should maybe get moved heading into this season. Sexton a little more likely than Markkanen, since Markkanen had that incredible all-star year, and he's still somewhat young. I mean, this is definitely the prime of his career. But Utah, I've got them on the under just because when you look at the rest of the West, this team, it doesn't stack up really to the rest of the West. Now, finally, it's only right that we end off these over-unders with the 2023 NBA champion Denver Nuggets at 53.5 wins. Incredible playoff run last year. Jokic, showing that he's the best player in the world. They had a terrific run last year, but this offseason, they lost their two key bench players, rotation players, in Bruce Brown and Jeff Green, and they didn't replace them. And now this team is extremely top-heavy. When you look at the starters with, Murray, Caldwell Pope, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, and Jokic, that is a loaded starting five. Of course, last year they were fantastic the whole season. But their bench, Christian Brown is the only one there that played rotation minutes for them last year. Reggie Jackson was picked at midseason, but it was too late in the season for him to really get a groove, so he didn't get many minutes. He didn't get to really play in the playoffs. They don't really have a backup 4 or 5. Zeke Naji, Vlatko Čančar, DeAndre, it's bad. Their backups are bad besides Christian Brown and, guys that didn't really get much burn last year for them, like Reggie Jackson and Peyton Watson. Now, a lot of people are pointing to Peyton Watson potentially having a good year this year with more opportunities, and that could definitely happen. He could be the Christian Brown of this year. But the other guys on their bench, you need a bench to be able to get you through a regular season. And the Nuggets, I think, are definitely one of the favorites in the, league to win it all again. But they don't have a bench, and you need a bench to carry you through the regular season. So with that, and along with the fact that there's definitely less pressure on them to win a bunch of games since they just won the title, I've got the Nuggets on the under for 53.5 wins just because they need a bench, and they do not have that. I wonder if at some point in the season, they go in the buyout market and they try to get, even just a couple of years ago, they had DeMarcus Cousins as their backup center. I don't know why Boogie is not in the league. It makes no sense to me. But if you wanted to get him back to play backup minutes for you, I think that that'd be better than what they've got right now. Because right now, it's a bunch of unproven guys. Even Christian Brown, if he's your sixth man, he thrived last year, of course, just his rookie season, but as an off-ball type player, if he's your sixth man automatically, how is he going to play in that role? So, just because they don't have a bench, I've got to go under because you need a bench to get you through the regular season. But playoff time, they're the Nuggets. It's Jokic, it's Jamal Murray. They were incredible, and they just won the title last year. So when playoff time, comes around, I think that they're going to be just fine. But regular season-wise, they don't have a bench, and you need a bench to win you some games, enough games to get to 53 wins. Over-unders are now complete. We've gone through all 30 teams, and the preseason and training camp, it's all starting in a couple days, man. It is crazy to think that we are finally about to get back into basketball season, and so many, unsure things about this year. So many questions, so much parity. It's so exciting, and so many questions. I'm definitely looking forward to answering some questions, in the next few episodes when preseason's going on. I'll have a bunch of questions here that I'll, try to figure out. I'll have my award predictions, my NBA Finals prediction. I think I've got a bold one coming up this year. So make sure you stay tuned for those videos as they're coming up. I mean, they're going to be coming up pretty soon, man. A couple, 2-3 times a week I'm going to be posting those videos, and once the season comes around, I'm hoping to do a daily show. And it's just so exciting. Definitely come around for the ride. It's going to be so much fun. I want to thank you so much for getting to this part of the video. If you enjoyed, a like rating would be greatly appreciated. Subscribe for more NBA content. I'm your host, Miles. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you in the next one.